All right, Paula. I think most of the folks are here, and I'll be monitoring to make sure any others that want to join can get in here. And I also have Karen from Bellingham assisting me on this as well. So, Paula, the show is yours. Yep, there's Paula. Paula, are you all set?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Sorry about that. I got a little bit lost. The town of Bellingham, along with its 5 municipal partners of Foxborough, Franklin, Medfield, Rentham, and Walpole, submitted in June for funding that became available from the Department of Housing and Urban Development through the state's Department of Housing and Community Development to provide assistance for various things related to the COVID-19 pandemic, one of which is assistance for microenterprise businesses who've been adversely affected by the virus and need to shut down businesses and all of the, need to upgrade their facilities for purposes of safety and that kind of thing. So we applied for about $750,000. We were awarded a total of, hold on, and I am looking at my notes, $683,100. Of that amount, the majority of it, $540,000, is being made available for microenterprise grants to small businesses in the 6 communities that are participating. We've divided it equally at $90,000 per community, and we'll leave it that way for about the first 6 months. And then depending on how demand plays out, if there are communities that have greater demand versus others that are not able to spend the money as quickly, we will take a look at just putting it into one big pot after 6 months and distributing it as needed, basically. The maximum grant for a small business that you can receive is $10,000. So if everybody in a single town maxed out their grant, if everybody could qualify for a $10,000 grant, that would mean 9 grants per community. We think it's going to be a lot less than that. We think a lot of small businesses will not be able to document that much money, because these are businesses of 5 people or less, that they have in losses or additional expenses. So we're looking at it probably being closer to 20 grants per community, but we won't know that until the actual applications come in. So that's kind of the overview. And Jim, if you want to put up that document that we're going to scroll through, this would be a good time to do that. And I'm going to run you through hold on a second. All right, I can't get back to the meeting. Can you hear me, Jim? Hello?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, sorry. The Zoom screen keeps disappearing on me. So as long as you can hear me, that's all that really matters. Do we have that slide up?
Yep, yeah, the document's up, starting right at eligibility.
Okay, great. So micro businesses is very specifically defined by the regulations that come with the money. The businesses, in order to qualify, have to be a for-profit business that has 5 or fewer employees, including the owners, or 1 owner or 2 owners, however many owners, you're included as employees. And that means not full-time employees. So if you have 7 people working for you, you're not eligible. Even if 2 of them only work 10 hours a week. We're counting heads, not full-time equivalents. The business can be, and you have to have been adversely affected by the COVID-19 virus. Business can be a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, or LLC. You must have a physical establishment in one of the participating communities. And by physical establishment, it's either a business location or we are not precluding home-based businesses. Okay, so that I'm sure that there are some small businesses that operate out of their homes. You're not precluded if you don't have a separate business establishment. You must be currently in operation and you must have been established prior to January 1, 2019. So that's important. And by currently in business, it does not mean that if you've temporarily had to close down due to the COVID virus, but you haven't actually dissolved the business, then you're still in business. Owners of the businesses, okay, so here's how we're qualifying you. We have to qualify the business as a low and moderate income entity. And to do that, what we use is the owner's family income. So assuming for our purposes right now, this one owner, they would have to be income eligible based on HUD guidelines at 80% of median income for the area, which is, you guys are in the Boston metro area. The income limits are fairly high for your area. But we have to do it based on where the owner lives, not where the business is. So let's say the owner of the business lives in Hopedale. Hopedale's in Worcester County. They have different income guidelines. You would have to qualify under their income guidelines. I can run you through what the ones are for the 6 towns that are participating in the grant if people want at the end. So family income we can define in one of 2 ways. Either, and this was a concession that we got from HUD, frankly, that the state went to bat for us with. We can use, if it qualifies you, gross income from tax returns, business and personal tax returns for the most recent tax year that you filed. When we started this process, we hadn't hit the 2019 filing deadline, so we were saying 2018 or 2019. We can still take 2018 if at the time of your application you're on an extension basis. You've extended your deadline for filing your taxes and you haven't filed 19 yet. We can still take 18. Obviously, those 2 tax returns cover periods prior to the virus, and you're going to have, my guess is that most businesses are going to be showing higher income in those times. Actually, the other way to qualify is we take actual income for the most recent 8-week period and we annualize it. So for that, we have to, it's a lot more work for us, but we have to take actual source documents. So that's going to be a little different depending on the business, but bank statements, accounting reports, QuickBook cash flows. We're going to have to work through some of that with the individual businesses because you all operate a little bit differently. But we do need source documents, and what we do is we take the last 8 weeks, which will be in the heart of the COVID virus, and we'll project that forward annually. You have to provide goods and services to multiple clients or customers. So if you've got a business that only serves one customer, you're not going to be eligible. The business has to be able to document a loss of income equal to or greater than the amount you're requesting that's related to COVID-19. And this is a key point. We had a webinar yesterday, the grantees with HUD and DHCD, the state agency that's managing these grants. And they said, basically, you've got to be really clear that the amount that you're providing is related to either preparing for, preventing, or responding to things that are related to COVID-19. So if you're just having a bad year because the weather's bad, or that's not going to. You have to relate your losses directly to COVID-19. You were required to shut down, clearly that's related to COVID-19. So that's the first thing we have to look at. You have to be in good standing with the state and town and current on all taxes due through 3/1/2020. If you've gotten behind since then, that's not an issue, but we will certify with your towns that you are current on taxes due through March 1st before the COVID emergency. You have to be active and have valid state and local licenses or registrations, whatever are applicable for the type of business that you're in. If you're a contractor, you have to have those licenses. If you're a restaurant, you have to have those licenses. So it's whatever is required for your business, you have to have active and valid licenses and registrations. You can't be party to any litigation involving the Commonwealth or the town in which you're operating. And there are a number of ineligible businesses. These are set by the state, and we have no ability to waive them. Real estate, rentals or sales businesses, businesses owned by people under 18, businesses that are chains, liquor stores, weapons and firearm dealers, lobbyists or cannabis-related businesses are not eligible by definition. As I said, the maximum income, the maximum grant per business is $10,000. So you have to have demonstrated costs, losses, expenses related to COVID that equal or exceed that amount. We're going to give priority to businesses requesting $5,000 or more. A, because they're taking bigger losses, and B, because there is an irreducible amount of administrative overhead in this program, and to get the 54 grants that at minimum we would have to do to spend this money out, we're probably going to have to process 100. We're expecting to need to go through about 150 applications minimum. So and we've only got a year to spend the money. So we're kind of under the gun to be able to spend the money in a reasonable time frame. And frankly, we want to do that because you need the money. You guys have been being impacted about this for 6 months. So, use of funds. You can use it for working capital to cover business costs such as rent, staffing, utilities. Funding can be used for purchasing personal protection equipment. On the meeting yesterday, there was a discussion about you can't use it for major equipment purchases, but if you had to upgrade a filtration system and HVAC system specifically to deal with air quality issues related to COVID, that's potentially eligible. They're still actually kind of on the bubble on that one. Can't be used for major equipment purchases, purchase of real property, construction activities, business expansion, or lobbying. If you're not sure, we're asking people, it's all very complicated, we're asking people to check in with us, and I will do my best to make a determination. They are giving the local grantees a fair amount of flexibility to make some of these decisions unless it's specifically precluded by the state regulations. But there are going to be places where I might have to consult with DHCD if I'm not sure. Funding sources. Funding is provided through a Massachusetts grant that was received from HUD. So they ran a grant application process, and we had to submit grant applications, and those were awarded by the state. So this is, now here's the application process. We've decided to make it a two-part application process, and part of that is to streamline it on our end, but a big part of it is the full application package. And some regions that have gotten money that are running this program are requiring you to submit all the documentation up front. That's a lot of work. And so what we're doing is a two-part application. Part one is just ensuring that the business meets the basic requirements, which are kind of the ones that we just went over. You're not in an ineligible business. You have been in business since 2009. You know, all of those things that we just went through. Those are the those guidelines. You have to meet those. So we're going to have you submit that, give us the name and address of your business, the name and address of the owners, that sort of thing. And we will have that application ready a week from today. It's still in process. So the preliminary application, name and address of the business, date the business was established, all of these things that produce the basic eligibility information, type of business that you're operating, the owner's certification the business is still in operation, certification that the business is current on taxes. We will check that with the town that you're located in. Name and address of the owners or owners if there are multiple owners. Number of persons employed, including the owners. You will have to have a DUNS number for this grant. And at the end of this presentation, I have a slide that, and we will provide it to you with the preliminary application. If you have a DUNS number, we have a website. You can look up your number if you don't remember it. If you do not have one, you're required to get one, and there is a procedure for doing an expedited online application for a number. So you should, supposedly they're turning those around in 24 hours. I never entirely trust that the government is turning anything around in 24 hours, but that's what they're saying. So that number it doesn't have to be submitted with the preliminary application, but you have to show that you've applied for it. So you can print out the screen that says, thank you for your application, or whatever it says at the end of the application process when you do it online. We want you to estimate, and we will not hold you to this. We're not asking for documentation at this point, but just an estimate of how much assistance you need from the grant and what you're planning to use it for. So that'll be a couple of sentences. And then there's a certification that you have to sign. Again, we'll have that at the end of this presentation. It's a duplication of benefits form, as do most federal regulations. Because so many different pots of money were issued under the CARES Act, which is the federal legislation, the multi-million, that created the PPE and all of these other, the additional unemployment benefits, all of the other things that were designed to assist people with the impact of COVID. You basically are, what you're certifying to is that you are not, the money that you're getting from this program is not duplicating any money that you got from any other source. So for example, if you got PPE money to cover payroll for 2 months, I think they were allowing, and you use that in March and April, but you have additional expenses that you need to cover for the period since then up to the date of your application, that's not duplicating. So you can't receive money that exceeds the total amount of your losses, basically, from any combination of these sources. So we have to have you sign a certification form to that effect. Preliminary applications, including this program description, will be available, and the process for obtaining a DUNS number. We'll have those available a week from today, on September 23rd. We'll distribute those applications to each of the towns to make available, hopefully on their websites for downloading, and in hard copy if they've got buildings that are open and have places they can make them available. You can also receive them by picking them up. We will have them in the Bellingham Community Development Office, which is Old Town Hall, the big yellow building at the intersection of Route 140 and 126. That office is open, the building is open. Our office is not open. We're mostly still working remotely, but we will have them in a bin outside the office door so that you can just come in and pick them up. You can also pick them up at the Municipal Center, which is open. Please bring a mask and wear it if you're coming into the Municipal Center. That's at 10 Mechanic Street, which is basically across the parking lot from the Community Development Office building. And you can request them by phone from me, and my phone number and email address are both there. Application deadline in the lottery. So the preliminary application, we're going to do a lottery. So we're going to have applications available for a period of 2 weeks. with a deadline of October 7th at 4:30. Those will be, as they come in, we'll be reviewing them for eligibility. The ones that are eligible, they meet the basic eligibility requirements, will be put in a lottery. There's going to be a lottery for each town, so there'll actually be 6 mini lotteries. And what that is designed to do is to establish the order in which we're going to process applications. So everybody gets the same fair shot in terms of where they come out in line for applying for the money. So applications received by October 7th go into the lottery. We will continue to take applications after that, but any applications that come in after that period will be added to the bottom of that town's waiting list, and we'll just take them in the order that they're received. So if you get in the first 2 weeks, you're in the lottery, you could be the last applicant we receive by October 7th and still be the first one that we review based on how you're picked in what order you're picked in the lottery. We will notify you of your status, eligible or not, immediately. Please give us an email address. We're trying to do as much of this as we can electronically. It's part of speeding up the application process, and partly because we are still working remotely. We will have limited office hours, but a lot of this is going to be dealt with on the internet. We'll provide you, so when we contact you, if you're eligible, we'll give you a lottery number. So we will assign you a lottery number. When we pull things from the lottery, we're going to read out the number, not the business name. That's for your privacy. So you'll know that you're number 14 when you hear it called. You know that that's where you place on the list, but your next door neighbor isn't going to know. The lottery will be held on October 14th, time to be announced. It'll be a Zoom presentation, as everything else in life is at this point in time. Each town will have a separate lottery. We'll create the waiting list for that town. Ballots with the lottery numbers will go in a bin. We're going to try and get representatives from the towns to pull them out. But that's a work in progress, and we've got to coordinate with our local partners on organizing that. So we'll read the number instead of the name. As the lottery numbers are drawn, we'll be recording them and on a list to create, again, the order in which we're going to go through those applications. We continue to take applications after the lottery, add them to the bottom of the waiting list. So once we have the preliminary waiting list, at that point, we're going to take the first 2 applicants from each town on each list. So the top 2 from each of the waiting lists, so 12 applications will be opened initially. And we will mail you the full application form. Now that's the one that's going to require more information and documentation, your income documentation, proof of good standing, your DUNS number if you've received it, all of the detailed information, and we'll have a whole list. We'll give you a checklist to provide us with that. We strongly urge you, I will be tethered to my cell phone and my email. If you don't understand something or you have questions, call us, because there's so many variables in this that just talking yesterday with all of the other participants running these programs across the state, some of the specific cases that were coming up were things that I wouldn't have thought of. So if you've got an unusual circumstance or you just don't understand what to send in or whether you're eligible, just call us and we'll talk about it, or email me. You'll have 2 weeks to put that application together, including the documentation. We need you to move fast because we need to move through the list fast in order to be fair to everybody. So if you're planning to dawdle, there's not going to be a lot of ability to do that. There are 2 of us who will be processing these applications, and we are 2 human beings. So we're doing 12 at a time. You'll have 2 weeks to submit the application. We'll go through them. If you are missing any information or something that we read in your application causes us to require clarifying information, like something either doesn't make sense to us or we have additional questions about it, we're going to get back to you and ask you for additional documentation. You'll have another week to get that in. So you're talking about a 3-week total application period. If you can't come up with all the documentation during that time, it sounds harsh, but we're going to close your case and we're going to move to the next people, because we're hoping there'll be a lot of applications and there are going to be people behind you who haven't had a chance yet. So we're trying to balance being fair to the applicant before us and being fair to all of the other people waiting behind you on the list. If your case is closed because you couldn't come up with what you needed during that period of time, you can reapply, but then you'll go to the next available spot at the bottom of that waiting list. And we will keep awarding money until we run out of money or run out of time. Applicants will be advised of the results of their eligibility review by mail or email. We prefer to do things as much as possible by email. If you're eligible, we'll prepare a program agreement, which you'll have to sign, which basically has the terms of the grant agreement. That will be, you'll sign it and have it notarized. You'll get it to us. We will have the town administrator will be the signatory for the town of Bellingham. Bellingham is the grantee from the state, so we're responsible for all of the administrative overhead on this grant. So everything comes to the community development office. So if you're concerned about providing financial information and stuff like that to us, let me be really clear with you. Number one, it's not going to the town that you live in. We're not providing that. The information's coming to us. Even Bellingham doesn't see it. It stays in the program office and the community development office. And if you're worried I'm going to know your business, let me assure you that the day I sign off on your application, I no longer remember anything about you except maybe the name of the business, because I am now in the midst of doing looking at somebody else's documentation. So there's only so much bandwidth. So I don't care and won't remember any of those details, but we have to have them in the file because the state will come in and randomly select files to monitor that we're doing what we're supposed to do. Generally speaking, once we have the signed and executed program agreement, a check will be cut within about 10 days. We submit invoices to the town once a week on Wednesdays. They are mailed out, the checks are generally mailed out a week from that following Friday. So if we submitted them today, not this coming Friday, 2 days from now, but the Friday after that, they would be mailing checks for those. So it's a pretty good turnaround time. And that's thanks to the good graces of the town of Bellingham, because they're fronting the money for us and then reimbursing themselves from the grant. So otherwise it would take longer if we had to wait for the state to draw down the money individually. The recipients will have to submit proof after you've received the funds that they were used for the intended purposes within 45 days of when you get your check. Excuse me. Canceled checks, for example, let's say part of what you're applying for is back mortgage payments or rent payments. You're going to send us copies of checks showing that that's what you use the money for, basically. We have to, it has to be demonstrated that you're using the grant funds for what you were saying that you needed them for. The funds are provided as a grant, but in that program agreement, under the regulations, there is a clawback provision basically that says that if you don't use the money as you intended it, or we determine that one of the things you signed under pains and penalties of perjury, like you're not duplicating benefits from another source, there is an option to recapture those funds. Okay. Next slide is the DUNS number thing. Again, this will be sent out to you with the preliminary, it'll be attached to the preliminary application. A lot of small businesses are not going to have DUNS numbers. If you have one, the first link will help you look it up if you don't remember the number. Excuse me, hold on a second. I've been working remotely so long that I spend hours without talking, so my voice is going. The second link is to request a DUNS number. And again, I can't swear to it, but I am told that there's a 24-hour turnaround on obtaining a number. So hopefully, I'm looking to you to let me know how good that's working. And then finally, we have the duplication of benefits certification. The first page here is just all the legalese that's part of the instructions, kind of like when you fill out your tax returns or things. So that's all the check here, read now. The final page is the duplication of benefits certification form that we're going to ask you to sign. So it's the name and titles of the business owners, and you're certifying that the money that you're getting from this program is not duplicating money that you got from any of those other 7 programs. Excuse me. And you're acknowledging, this is the acknowledgement that you would have to repay the money if it was determined that it was duplicative. So it doesn't serve you to not be straight with us about that. I'd rather have you get less money and not have to pay any of it back than claim money twice and get into a pickle later. I allowed for 3 business owners. I'm assuming that most of you will be 1 or 2 business owners. If you need to add, you've got, by some strange fluke, you have 4 owners, you'd have to add another signature line and page on this. So that's kind of the 411 on how this is going to roll out. And Jim, at this point, if you want to take questions, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Paula. That was excellent. That was very well done. We do have time for questions, so if you want, there's about 40 of us. So if you don't mind either raising the little hand in the chat box or putting in the chat feature itself, you know, that you want to ask a question or the question itself, I'm happy to read it to Paula, or if you want to read it to Paula. And yes, and the first question, yes, that document will be available. That was sent out just about an hour ago to all of your town representatives. So we will, we're asking that the towns post this on their website. It will be on the town of Bellingham's website and later this afternoon. Bob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have a quick question in regards to eligibility. Why a nonprofit business is not eligible?
It's a federal regulation regarding the use of CDBG funds.
Really?
It's not even the state setting that one. That comes directly from the feds.
I mean, we're closed till phase 4, our Performing Arts Center in Foxborough. This is, oh man. All right, well.
Yeah, they're looking at there being some other funding available. There's certain kinds of activity, but for this specific grant, it's specifically limited to for-profit businesses. And that question was asked a lot yesterday, actually. So I hear you. I have no ability to waive that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Paula, I see another question here. Are you disqualified if you received a SBA loan?
Not if you have additional expenses or losses beyond what the loan covered. So in other words, if you get an SBA loan to pay certain expenses and then you used it up and you have still additional losses or expenses related to COVID, we can cover the additional. So it's not duplicative just because you got money from one of those other sources. It's that the total amount of your losses or expenses related to COVID has to be less than or equal to what you received from all of these sources. Is that clear?
Sounds good to me. I see Mr. Samir, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question? You're muted. Looks like he's still muted. We'll come back. We'll come back to you. So there's two questions related to income. One is just more. Could you talk a little bit more about the income qualifications, and one was asking more specifically about median income for Foxborough. Paula, I don't know if you want to touch on the income limits that are required, or if that's something we want to just send out as part of this package of links. I know it's fairly specific to the county or the area. So Paula, you're muted again. Wait,
Sorry, I muted myself because I was coughing, so
no worries.
I was switching off to a Word file, and then I sometimes get lost finding my way back to the Zoom thing. So for the 6 communities, again, the reason I didn't just publish it as part of the presentation is it's based on where you live as the owners. So the eligibility guidelines for an owner who lives in Hopedale are going to be different than if you actually live in the same community, one of the 6 communities that are participating. So the income guidelines for all of the 6 communities involved in this grant are, for a single person, $67,400. 2 people is $77,000. This is annual gross income. 3 is $86,650. 4 is $96,250, and it goes all the way up to 8 at $127,50. So they're fairly decent, and that represents 80% of the median income for that area, which is, in your case, Greater Boston. So it's probably the highest income level in the state, I believe.
Thank you. Mr. Samir, I see that you've unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yes, thanks everyone for the efforts. My one question is, what if you only own the business for a couple of months?
You're not going to be eligible. Well, let me ask you this. Was the business in existence prior to January 1st, 2019, and you recently purchased it? Or
Yes,
is it a new
right.
business you just started?
Yeah, no, the business was there since 1969, but I just purchased the business a couple of months ago.
It's potentially eligible. That's something that we would have to work through and just get clarified. So if the business, you may have to prove that the business has been in existence since 2019. How long ago did you purchase it?
Yep.
When?
A couple of months ago, 2 months.
Okay.
July 23rd, so almost 2 months, yeah.
It's possible. So you should submit an application and let us work through it. And again, can I just say something?
Okay, sounds good.
If people have questions that are private and that they're not comfortable discussing on Zoom, I'm anticipating these questions are going to be of a more generic variety. Please feel free to phone or email me if you have a specific question about your business or your finances.
Great. Paula, we have a few more questions here. All applications go to Bellingham Town Hall?
You can, they're coming to the Community Development Office. So you can pick the applications up at Town Hall, but they should all be sent back to the Community Development Office at 2 Mechanic Street. The preliminary applications you can submit electronically to us. We'll give you that email address that I have. So you can submit them electronically. It will be on the application. You'll have to sign them and then scan them because I need signed applications. And then just drop the original in the mail so that I have it for the file. But that way we get it faster and we can process it faster.
Great. I have a few questions related to kind of proof for loss of income. I guess maybe, do you have some examples of what the proof of loss of income? And there's one more specific question related to things like, what if based on you paid your mortgage or rent, but despite having income or due to the cancellation of a contract due to COVID. So rather than, you chose to pay rent and in turn you lost a contract due to COVID, would that be something that could qualify? And if so, what would be that kind of evidence that you would be looking for, I guess?
That's something I would need to talk to people directly about. I would need more information to answer that.
Okay.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
I asked a question yesterday on the webinar about whether if you had accounts receivable that were not being paid at the moment because the businesses that you're supplying goods or services to are behind also the 8 ball. And so your money is not coming in. Could that be considered a loss? And I was told that that would not be, because potentially we give you the money and then you get paid later. That, then you're duplicating again the benefits. So it gets a little tricky. And truthfully, when we were running examples by HUD and DHCD yesterday in this Zoom meeting that we had specifically related to micro businesses, we got a whole lot of answers that could be, depends on the circumstances. So I'm not going to be able to be more specific than they are. We will look at everything individually. My advice is, if you think you could benefit from the program, submit an application. It's a definite no if you don't submit anything. If you submit it, we may be able to get you in. We want to spend the money and we want to get it out to you. So if we can possibly justify it, we will, without breaking any rules.
Excellent. One question here that I think I could tackle is, will each town have a lead person for questions that process, or a direct email with Bellingham? So Paula is our go-to. She's our expert. That's Community Opportunities Group. Paula Stewart's contact information that was part of the presentation here. Again, we'll post that presentation Word document as well as the YouTube link, which is in your chat feature right now, that we've entered in there. You can find this whole recorded presentation there. And also on Bellingham's website for our community development, you can find her contact there. However, in each of your planning offices, you do have an individual who has been working directly with Paula and myself on getting this program moving, so they could certainly direct you in the right direction. But again, Paula is our expert and our go-to, and we're leaning on her for all of assistance. So she's the best point of contact. Let's see. I have somewhat of a specific question here, but it could probably help with some others that have similar questions. This one states, we have 2 employees and some part-time / junior staff, teenagers. The junior staff was not used for several weeks during the shutdown. We have since brought staff back. If there are more than 5 employees and part-timers, then are we ineligible?
The number of employees is calculated on the date of your application. So if you used to have 7 and now you've only got 5, you're eligible. If you used to have 10 and then you went down to 5 and now you're back up to 7, you're not. So it's at the date of application. And the most frequently asked question is, if I have 2 part-time people, can I count that as 1? And the answer is no. It's just actual physical bodies we're counting.
Excellent. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all in the chat feature for the moment. Does anybody who's here have any additional questions?
I have one. Has this been clear to people? Because I deal in government speak, and sometimes I worry that as much as I try to normalize the way I'm presenting things, there's an irreducible amount of bureaucracy in this. So I strongly encourage people, if there's something you don't get, don't just walk away. If you think you might need this money and you might be eligible for it, just call us and we'll be happy to talk it through with you.
Excellent. Paula, yeah, you got a bunch of thumbs up, so I think you were pretty clear and concise. Yeah. Excellent.
Excellent.
All right. Well, with that, I think that will conclude it for the moment. We'll post this discussion on our YouTube link, which again is in your chat feature, but you can also find it on the town's website. If you have any questions about where to find any of this stuff, feel free to give me a call, James Kupfer, Bellingham Planning Office. And again, specific questions about the program and application, that's Paula Stewart from Communities Opportunities Group. She's going to be helping us along throughout the year. So thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it and great questions, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you, Paula.
Bye-bye.